Stop pleasing everyone. The Buddhist way to protect your peace and respect. You wake up each day with a sense of duty. You say yes to every favor. Put others first, and smile even when you're drained. But have you ever wondered, in all that giving, when does it stop being an act of kindness and start becoming an act of self-sacrifice? You know that feeling when you've done everything for everyone, but at the end of the day, you feel empty? When you've given everything you had, but still feel like no one notices? It's as if you've become invisible. But why? Is it possible that the more you give, the less you have for yourself? We've been taught that kindness is the key to happiness. That if we're always available and accommodating, people will love us more. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if giving too much is actually stealing your peace and draining your energy? Buddhism offers us a surprising solution. It teaches us that true kindness doesn't come from constant giving without limits, but from a deep understanding of ourselves and our needs. It's about creating balance, setting healthy boundaries, and finding harmony between caring for others and caring for yourself. Today, we'll dive deep into why being too friendly can lead us away from the true path of self-respect and balance. We'll explore how you can give without the fear of being drained and create relationships that nourish rather than deplete your energy. Let's take this journey together, because when we learn to honor ourselves, we can give in a way that truly feels good, both for us and those around us. Are you ready to reclaim your energy and live life on your own terms? Let's begin. 1. The problem with being too friendly. Have you ever noticed how easily we can say yes to others, even when we feel completely overwhelmed? Perhaps you've agreed to take on yet another project at work, even though you're already struggling to keep up with your own tasks. Maybe you've smiled through an uncomfortable conversation, not because you felt joy, but because you wanted to avoid conflict and keep the peace. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that being endlessly agreeable makes us more lovable. Right? After all, who doesn't want to be liked, accepted, or appreciated? We tend to believe that being constantly available, constantly giving of ourselves, somehow validates our worth. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself why this need to please others feels so compelling? Why do we often put others' needs above our own, even when it's draining us? Is it because we fear rejection? Or because we feel that if we don't meet everyone's expectations, we won't belong? In a world that thrives on conformity and approval, it's not surprising that we've internalized these beliefs from a young age. We're praised for our willingness to give, for always being there for others, for showing up, whether we feel like it or not. We grow up in a culture where validation is the currency of acceptance, and it becomes ingrained in us, as if to say, if I give everything, I'll be valued. But here's where it gets tricky. Buddhism teaches us a different perspective, one that might seem counterintuitive at first. It reminds us that this constant seeking of external validation, this attachment to approval, is a source of suffering. Why? Because the more we seek approval from others, the more we unknowingly give away our personal power. We begin to define ourselves not by our own values or beliefs, but by the expectations and judgments of those around us. Our lives shift from being self-directed to being shaped by the whims of others. And when we live this way, we become like the river flowing into a desert. Our energy is drained. Our efforts feel futile, and in the end, we're left with little to show for it. Buddha's teachings urge us to look inward, To recognize that true peace and fulfillment come from within, not from external validation. The moment we stop seeking constant approval, we begin to regain our sense of power. Think of it like this. Just as a river should flow into fertile soil, our kindness, our time, our energy should be directed toward places where it can be nourished and valued. When we stop overextending ourselves, we begin to see the beauty in investing our energy where it truly matters. Where it is reciprocated and appreciated, we begin to attract the right people into our lives, those who see us for who we truly are, not just for what we give. By choosing to stop living for others' approval, we shift from a life of depletion to a life of renewal. We learn that it's okay to say no when we need to set boundaries that honor our well-being, and to prioritize our own needs. This isn't about selfishness, but about self-respect, about recognizing that we are worthy of care and attention. Not because of what we can give, but simply because we exist. And when we start living from a place of self-respect, we no longer feel drained by our relationships. Instead, we find that our energy is being spent on relationships and activities that genuinely nourish us. We begin to build a life that is rich in meaning, not because we are constantly striving to please others, but because we are grounded in the authenticity of who we are. This is the true path to freedom, to living a life that isn't defined by the opinions of others but by our own inner truth. And when we choose to honor that truth, we stop wasting our energy on relationships and situations that take more than they give. We begin to reclaim our power, our joy, and our peace. And in doing so, we create a life that reflects not only our kindness but our own inherent worth, which can never be determined by how much we give to others. Our value comes from within, and once we embrace that, everything else falls into place. 2. The importance of boundaries in Buddhist philosophy. In the teachings of Buddhism, one of the most profound principles is the idea of self-respect. It's a simple yet powerful truth. If we do not respect ourselves, how can we expect the world to show us respect? This isn't about arrogance or pride. No, it's about recognizing and honoring our own worth. It's about understanding that we are worthy of care, love, and dignity, not because of what we give to others, but because we inherently deserve it. When we can acknowledge our own value, we shift the way we view ourselves and the world around us. Through this understanding, we also realize that setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness, but an essential act of self-preservation. Boundaries are the protective walls we build around our inner peace, ensuring that we don't lose ourselves in the demands and expectations of others. Without boundaries, we are at the mercy of the world around us, constantly reacting to the needs of others without considering our own. But just as the Buddha teaches us to cultivate mindfulness and awareness, boundaries help us remain grounded in our own truth, helping us live intentionally instead of passively. Imagine, if you will, a grand tree standing tall in the middle of a forest. Its roots run deep into the earth, firmly anchored to the ground. The tree might sway in the wind, but it does not fall. It stands there, steadfast, unshaken by the passing storm. The tree does not allow the winds to uproot it, nor does it bend to their will. This tree, in all its majesty, represents a life lived with strong boundaries. Just as the tree stands firm and unmoved, we too must cultivate a sense of self that is not swayed by the ever-changing demands of others. To live with boundaries is not to live rigidly or to shut people out, but rather to preserve our inner peace while still engaging with the world. It's about having the wisdom to know when to say yes and when to say no. Too often, we think that to be loved and respected, we must always say yes. But saying yes to everything, while it may bring temporary satisfaction or approval, ultimately leads to exhaustion and resentment. It's like trying to pour water into a glass that's already full. You can't give any more without overflowing. Let me share a story with you to illustrate this. There were two employees, both hardworking, both dedicated to their jobs. The first employee was always running around trying to help everyone, constantly saying yes even when they were overwhelmed. They would skip lunch breaks to finish extra tasks, respond to late-night emails, and rush to help colleagues with their problems, all at the expense of their own well-being. On the surface, they seemed like the model employee, the one everyone could rely on. But slowly over time, they began to burn out. They became exhausted, their productivity dropped, and their sense of fulfillment dwindled. No one seemed to notice the toll it was taking on them. They had given everything, but in return, they felt unappreciated and invisible. The second employee, on the other hand, was also diligent, but they knew the value of their time. They worked hard, but they also knew when to say no. They set clear boundaries, ensuring they didn't overextend themselves. If they were asked to take on a task that wasn't within their responsibilities, or if they were asked to stay late when it wasn't necessary, they politely declined. They understood that their time and energy were precious. They didn't feel guilty for saying no. Instead, they felt empowered by their ability to prioritize their own well-being. Now, when it came time for a promotion, who do you think was more respected in the workplace? More often than not, it is the one with boundaries. The reason is simple. The second employee valued their own time. They didn't allow others to exploit them. And as a result, people respected them more. They were not seen as someone who could be taken advantage of. Instead, they were viewed as someone who understood their worth. People started to trust them more, not because they said yes to everything, but because they were firm, dependable, and unwavering in their respect for themselves. Boundaries, dear friends, are not just lines drawn in the sand. They are the manifestation of self-respect. When we honor our own time, energy, and needs, the world begins to see us as valuable. And when we learn to say no, not out of spite but out of wisdom, we protect our inner peace. We become like that strong tree, able to bend with the wind, but never broken by it. Setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness. It's a powerful act of self-care, one that ensures we have the energy to give in ways that are meaningful and sustainable. By establishing healthy boundaries, we not only protect ourselves, but we also create space to give more authentically to others. We become the kind of person who can give with an open heart, without losing ourselves in the process. As we learn to live with boundaries, we find that we have more to offer, not less. We become more present, more focused, and more available to those who truly value us. Just as the tree nourishes the forest with its roots, we too can nourish the world around us with our rooted sense of self. When we stand firm in our boundaries, we offer a steadiness to others, becoming a source of strength and wisdom for those who need it most. In the end, boundaries are not just about protecting ourselves. They are about honoring our capacity to give and love in a way that honors both ourselves and the world around us. 3. The impact of over-apologizing. Words are powerful, and Buddhism teaches us that our words shape our reality in ways we often don't fully realize. One of the most subtle yet damaging habits we can fall into is over-apologizing. How many times have you said, "Sorry," without truly needing to? Sorry to bother you. Sorry for interrupting. Or even, "Sorry, I didn't mean to say that." These phrases may seem polite and harmless on the surface, but they subtly undermine our self-worth and diminish our presence. Each time we apologize unnecessarily, we unknowingly give away a piece of our personal power, letting go of our sense of confidence and autonomy. The Buddha, in his wisdom, once said, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" This simple yet profound teaching shows us that when we refuse to accept someone's insult or negativity, it remains with them, not with us. Similarly, when we apologize for things that don't require an apology, we hand over our sense of worth, allowing others to define how we should feel, what we should believe, or how we should behave. In these moments, we let go of our own truth and let someone else impose their view upon us. The habit of over-apologizing is rooted in the fear of conflict, the fear of rejection, and the desire for approval. We feel the need to apologize even when we've done nothing wrong, simply to smooth over a situation or to make others feel more comfortable. But what happens when we apologize unnecessarily? We weaken our sense of self and create a habit of diminishing our own presence. This becomes an unconscious cycle that strips us of our power and leaves us second-guessing our every word and action. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates this point. There was a young monk who was walking through a marketplace when a passerby insulted him. Instead of reacting angrily or even offering an apology, the monk simply smiled and remained calm. The people around him, curious about his composed demeanor, asked how he could stay so unfazed in the face of such rudeness. The monk calmly replied, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The crowd was puzzled at first, but then the monk explained, "Just as a gift belongs to the giver when it is not accepted, so does an insult belong to the one who offers it. I do not accept their anger, so it does not affect me." This story carries a profound lesson. We don't have to accept negativity from others. We don't need to apologize for existing, for having a voice, or for taking up space in the world. Just as the monk refused to accept the passerby's insult, we too can choose not to accept the unnecessary apologies we make for things that don't require them. When we stop apologizing for every little thing, we begin to reclaim our energy, our confidence, and our sense of self. We no longer feel the need to apologize for simply being ourselves. In a world that often encourages people to be polite at all costs, we may forget that being kind does not require us to diminish our own worth. We don't have to shrink to fit the expectations of others. We don't have to apologize for speaking up, for disagreeing, or for expressing our feelings. True kindness comes from a place of respect, not self-sacrifice. When we stop over-apologizing, we stop placing the responsibility for others' feelings on our shoulders. We stop bending over backward to keep others comfortable at the cost of our own well-being. Instead, we allow space for our true selves to exist without fear or shame. The more we practice this, the more we develop a quiet confidence in who we are. Just like the monk who remained calm and unshaken in the face of insult. When we stop apologizing for things that don't need an apology, we begin to see ourselves in a new light. We begin to recognize that we are worthy of space, of respect, and of love, not because we give endlessly, but because we exist as we are, with our strengths and imperfections. This shift in perspective not only strengthens our own sense of self but also fosters more authentic relationships with those around us. So the next time you feel the urge to apologize unnecessarily, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, do I truly need to apologize for this? If the answer is no, don't be afraid to simply stand firm in your own truth. Stop giving away pieces of yourself through empty apologies. In doing so, you'll begin to reclaim your power, your peace, and your presence in the world. Just as the monk did, you can learn to smile in the face of negativity and remain unmoved by the judgments of others. When you stop apologizing for simply being you, you'll discover the quiet strength that comes from owning your own worth. 4. Understanding the role of self-respect in relationships. Buddhism teaches us to be mindful of where we invest our energy, especially when it comes to relationships. Not every relationship deserves our kindness, and not every person should have access to our time, love, and emotional energy. This may sound harsh, but it's a truth that, when understood, can transform the way we approach the people in our lives. How many times have you given and given, only to find yourself feeling drained, unappreciated, and empty? It's a painful experience when you realize that your efforts to nurture others are not being reciprocated. These one-sided relationships can leave us exhausted, making us question the value of our kindness. But Buddhism gently guides us toward a more discerning approach. The truth is, just as we carefully choose where to invest our money, we must also be selective about where we invest our energy, time, and affection. Not every relationship is deserving of our emotional resources. Some people may take without giving back, constantly drawing from us without ever replenishing what they've taken. Think of it like this. Would you give a rare and precious diamond to someone who doesn't understand its value? Or worse, someone who might toss it aside without a second thought? Of course not. You would reserve that precious gift for someone who truly appreciates its worth. Similarly, our kindness, our time, and our energy are valuable treasures. We cannot afford to give them endlessly to relationships that only take and never give in return. When we continue to pour ourselves into these unbalanced connections, we become like a river flowing into a desert. Our efforts are absorbed and wasted, leaving us with nothing to show for it. We end up feeling like we've given everything, only to find that we are empty and unfulfilled. This is why Buddhism encourages us to be discerning, to recognize the value of our own energy, and to make sure we direct it toward relationships that nourish us, not drain us. Imagine a wise old monk who once taught his disciples that even trees, which give shade and shelter to everyone, must also take care of their own roots. If the tree spends all its energy helping others without nourishing itself, it will wither and die. It's a beautiful analogy. Just as the tree needs its roots to remain strong in order to continue offering shade, we too must take care of ourselves if we wish to continue giving meaningfully to others. If we neglect our own needs and fail to replenish our inner strength, we risk becoming depleted and unable to offer the love, support, and care that we so freely give. Self-respect in relationships is not about being cold or distant. It's not about building walls that keep people out. Instead, it's about understanding our own worth and ensuring that we give our time, love, and energy to people who respect and appreciate us in return. It's about knowing that we deserve relationships that honor who we are, where our efforts are not only acknowledged but reciprocated. When we maintain a healthy level of self-respect, we stop pouring our energy into relationships that are one-sided. We recognize that we have the right to set boundaries and protect our well-being, even if it means saying no to people or situations that drain us. Self-respect is also about knowing when to step back and reassess relationships. Sometimes, we hold on to relationships out of guilt or fear of being alone. But this only leads to more suffering. Buddhism teaches us that true compassion begins with compassion for ourselves. By taking care of our own needs and protecting our energy, we create space for meaningful connections to flourish, connections that are rooted in mutual respect and understanding. These are the relationships that lift us up, that help us grow, and that nourish both us and the people around us. When we learn to honor ourselves in this way, we attract the right kind of people into our lives, those who see our value and reciprocate our kindness and care. These relationships become a source of strength, not a burden, and just as the tree thrives by nurturing its roots, we too flourish when we ensure that our foundation is solid and well cared for. In the end, self-respect in relationships is about finding balance, giving when it's right and protecting ourselves when it's necessary. It's about recognizing that we are worthy of love and respect, not just because of what we give, but because we are inherently deserving of it. And when we live from this place of self-respect, we open the door to deeper, more fulfilling connections with others. 5. Saying no and honoring your time. In today's world, saying no can often feel like an act of rebellion, as though we're defying the expectations placed on us. We are often trained to say yes to everything, to be constantly available, and to fulfill everyone else's requests, no matter the cost. The pressure to be everything to everyone can be overwhelming. But deep inside, we know that constantly saying yes comes at a steep price. It chips away at our peace of mind, our well-being, and, ultimately, our energy. The more we give, the less we have for ourselves. The more we say yes, the more we lose sight of what truly matters. And this is where Buddhism teaches us an important lesson about balance, mindfulness, and self-care. Buddhism encourages us to be mindful of our actions, not just in relation to others, but toward ourselves as well. It's easy to become consumed by the needs of others, to fall into the trap of thinking that our worth is determined by how much we give or how available we are. But the Buddha never encouraged us to be endlessly available to others. He emphasized the importance of caring for ourselves first, so that we can show up fully for others when it truly matters. Saying no isn't an act of rejection, it's an affirmation of self-respect. Every time we say yes to someone else, are we also saying no to ourselves? Are we prioritizing the needs and desires of others over our own well-being? This can be a difficult realization, especially for those of us who have been conditioned to believe that saying yes is a virtue. But it's crucial to ask ourselves these questions. Every time we overextend ourselves and sacrifice our own peace to please others, we are giving away a piece of our own soul. We lose a little bit of our balance, a little bit of our inner peace, and a little bit of our energy. And eventually, we have nothing left to give, not to ourselves, and not to others. The truth is, when we say yes to everything, we spread ourselves too thin. We wear ourselves out trying to be all things to all people. And in doing so, we end up being unable to give our best to anyone, including ourselves. But when we learn to say no with grace and compassion, we protect our energy and maintain our well-being. We begin to honor our own needs and prioritize the things that matter most to us. It's a form of self-care that allows us to be more present and effective when we do say yes. Let me share a story that illustrates the importance of saying no. There was a wise monk who lived far away from the city, in a peaceful retreat where villagers would often come seeking his guidance. One day, a villager arrived at the monk's doorstep, his heart heavy with a difficult decision. The monk welcomed him in and listened attentively, as he always did. But after some time, the monk gently told the villager, "I cannot help you today. You must find your answers within yourself." The villager, shocked and confused, replied, "But master, I've traveled so far, and I've been seeking your wisdom for so long. Surely, you can help me." The monk smiled kindly and said, "By saying no to you now, I am giving you the space to find your own answers. Sometimes, saying no is the most generous thing I can offer. It is in this moment of emptiness that you will find your strength and clarity." At first, the villager didn't understand. How could the monk's refusal be an act of kindness? But over time, he realized that in allowing the villager to stand on his own, the monk was giving him the gift of empowerment. By setting a boundary, the monk was helping the villager learn to trust himself, to connect with his own wisdom, and to find the answers that lay within. Sometimes, saying no is not about rejecting someone, it's about offering them the space to grow. This story teaches us that saying no is not selfish. In fact, it can be one of the most generous things we can do. It allows us to preserve our energy, protect our well-being, and set boundaries that honor our time and our needs. When we learn to say no with confidence, we free ourselves from the constant pressure to please others. We begin to respect ourselves enough to know that our time and energy are precious. And by honoring our own needs, we are better able to show up for others when it truly matters. Saying no is not a rejection of others, but a commitment to ourselves. It's an act of self-respect that enables us to maintain our peace and our balance. It creates space for us to focus on what's truly important, rather than being overwhelmed by every request that comes our way. And when we honor our time and our energy, we become more present, more grounded, and more available to give in ways that are meaningful and sustainable. In the end, saying no is not about closing ourselves off from others, but about creating the conditions for us to give with intention and purpose. By honoring our time, we honor our own worth. And when we respect ourselves in this way, we are able to give from a place of fullness rather than depletion, bringing greater meaning and depth to all of our relationships. As we reflect on the Buddhist teachings about friendliness, boundaries, and self-respect, we are reminded that true power comes from respecting and honoring ourselves. It's easy to get caught up in the rush of daily life, trying to please everyone and seeking external validation. But the real strength lies within us. In the quiet moments when we choose to stand firm in our own worth and set healthy boundaries. It is through this delicate balance of knowing when to say no and when to offer our kindness that we create the relationships that truly nourish us. These are the connections that help us grow, that support our well-being, and allow us to flourish. Living with intention means prioritizing our needs without guilt and choosing to surround ourselves with people who respect and appreciate us. We don't need to say yes to everything or bend over backwards to earn affection. Instead, we can offer warmth, love, and kindness without losing ourselves in the process. By learning to master the art of controlled friendliness, we can ensure that our energy is spent wisely and that the right people are drawn to us, those who see our value and reciprocate the respect we give. Let's stop seeking constant approval from others. We don't need to measure our worth based on how much we give or how much others like us. We are enough as we are. When we live authentically and honor our own needs, we create space for the right relationships to flourish. The people who resonate with our true selves will come into our lives, while those who drain us will naturally fade away. It's in this space of self-respect that true peace and happiness begin to grow. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video and reflect on these important lessons. Remember, every step you take toward honoring yourself, setting boundaries, and nurturing meaningful connections brings you closer to the life you truly deserve. If this video resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your reflections in the comments below. I'm here to listen and engage with you. And if you found value in what was shared, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Together, let's continue this journey of growth, self-discovery, and kindness. Thank you again for being here, and I look forward to connecting with you in the next video.